All right, belt drive car version 2. We're going to start on making the frame. First of all, I want to take you through some techniques for cutting the craft sticks. These are hard for some smaller hands, but there are different ways we can do that. First of all, we're using the snips. This is my preferred method. These are heavier duty scissors that can just cut right through the craft sticks. You'll see it leaves a nice clean edge. But it does have a tendency to crack the craft sticks pretty easily, so you'll have to be careful of that and watch out, where you're actually holding it when you're cutting. Another method is to use these side cutters. You'll notice they cut to one side, and with these, you can actually crimp the craft sticks. You squeeze it, and it's kind of hard to see until I get a better close up here. You just sort of crimp the craft sticks enough so that when you take it in your hand and then you get a little look at the crease right there, and then you can break it off pretty easily once you do that. That leaves a few little bits of the wood fiber sticking out, so those have to be cleaned off, but still, it's a little bit easier to cut it that way. If all you have handy are needle nose pliers, the inside of those have little jaws just like the side cutters. You can use those in very much the same way. Give it a squeeze on one side and you'll put an actual crimp or crease into the wood, and you can break it off. You can see what happens if you don't take the time to do it on both sides. You get a bit of a rougher cut. So I'll crimp it on both sides of the craft stick this time and then break it off. And then you can see that you get little bit of a cleaner cut when you do that. You still have the fibers of the wood sticking out, but those clean off relatively easy, especially for the type of work we'll be doing them with. This is kind of a cool technique, but if all you have handy is a pliers, if I take a small piece of craft stick and use that as sort of an extension of the pliers, squeeze hard, and then I break it just like I did earlier, you'll see that makes a nice clean cut on there. Still some of the fibers in the wood, but it's a really straight, clean cut doing it that way. You can also hold the piece at an angle and get yourself an angle cut pretty nicely too. You'll see that'll come in handy a little bit later in part of our build. Okay, the actual nose of the pliers could be used to cut some of that off too. I missed the point on that just a little bit there, but you can create shapes and curves and that kind of stuff using that. Another thing to remember is the terminals of your motor. That's where the wire actually connects to the motor. That's called the terminal. That's a very, very fragile connection. And when you're moving the motor around and you're soldering the wires to the switches, they can break off really easy. I like to take a little bit of hot glue and go around the top, bottom, and sides of the wires and just kind of cover up that connection with the hot glue, because once that dries, it creates a nice plastic protection for that area. You can see how the terminal is now embedded in the hot glue when it's dried. That helps protect the joint from breaking. One last thing, you have 9-volt batteries and the battery snaps in the kit. Don't connect the battery snap to the battery unless that battery snap is soldered into the circuit already. That can create a short circuit and it can get really hot and dangerous. So my suggestion, don't even unwrap the battery until you're ready to connect the battery to the circuit. So we're going to start by taking 2 full craft sticks, just adding a little bit of glue to tack them together. And that'll create something that looks like that. And then we're going to cut 2 pieces to the width of those 2 craft sticks. So I'm marking them with a pencil, just making 2 of them. I'm going to use my snip to cut those 2 pieces off. And then we're going to glue it to the top and the bottom of the sticks. Now I realize I have the video going about 4 times the speed of reality here. I don't think you need to see it in real time. This is the top view, and then this is the bottom view. But if viewing it at a high speed like that causes any problems, just please pause it and start over. Now we need to start by cutting 2 3-inch pieces. There you can see I measured them and I'm cutting them. But what you could actually do is take a whole stick and just cut it right in half. That'll create 2 3-inch pieces. Then you want to glue those together along the side. That's a fragile glue joint, I understand that, but this piece going across the top, just like the last piece we put together, will make that a much stronger connection. So cut the short piece, glue that along the top. Now you're going to have two pieces. This one's going to be the top view of the piece that the front wheels are going to be on. The other is the main frame. Now we're going to cut a piece at 3.5 inches. So measure that out. I'm measuring it on my board and I'm cutting that. Then I'm also going to make a mark 1 inch away from the flat cut. Okay, that's going to help us in placing that a little bit later. After that, we're going to need 2 more 3-inch pieces, and these I'm actually going to cut at a flat on both sides. So once I have those 2 pieces cut, I'm going to take one of the pieces and glue it. We're going to kind of glue it to that 3.5-inch piece, just like I was showing. So let's go ahead and glue one piece to the curved side of the 3.5-inch piece. Then we're going to add a fair amount of glue to the back of the piece that you just glued. So we're going to get a lot of glue on there. And then we're going to attach the other piece, kind of sandwiching that curved 3.5-inch piece. It's going to look like this when you're done. Okay, you'll notice there's a big empty gap in there. I'm going to fill that with hot glue. I'm also going to fill the gaps underneath with hot glue. This is going to be the front fender of the car, protecting the front wheel. So I want to make sure that's nice and strong. Now here I'm going to just slant off the edges, make it look a little more streamlined, a little more racer-like. You can do that. That's optional if you'd like. But now where I marked that 1 inch line, I'm going to glue that to the bottom of the first couple of sticks that we glued together. It's going to be the main frame. This is what the top view looks like. Notice the short pieces are on top. This is what the bottom view looks like. You'll notice I glued the front T to the bottom.